Hey, and welcome everybody. God bless you all. Today we are going to be giving you a live review of a recent discussion interview between Mohammed Hijab and Bart Ehrman. I have with me my brother Claus. Chris, bro, thank you for coming. This is going to be live and raw reactions from Chris because you haven't seen this before, have you, bro?
No, I actually haven't. Thank you very much for inviting me on to the show. I've only really watched some of the comments that Mohammed Hijab and them put on social media on like Twitter and
Mm-hmm.
things to that. So I knew that the debate with him and or the discussion with him and Jordan Peterson had been canceled again. But
Yeah,
other than
yeah,
that, I
that's
didn't
right.
know that I didn't know that he had already interviewed the famous Imam Bart Ehrman.
Right, and that's what we're going to get into. How helpful was this interview, or did Muhammad Hijab mess up again? And of course, I'm referring back to the first time he did that big mess up with Yasser Qadi. I don't think it's on that same scale, but man, I really think he messed up. So, like I said, guys, welcome everybody. God bless you all. In the comments, we see your live chat here, and everybody viewing us, and those who will view it later. Thank you for watching. God bless you all. And yeah, we're gonna get started right away. I just want to again explain what's going on here. Mr. Muhammad Hijab is doing an interview on this. I guess it's a YouTube channel called Islam Net is hosting Bart Ehrman. They thought Muhammad Hijab would be the good guy to interview him. I wonder why. We're gonna get into it. Does Ehrman confirm the Muslim story? Does he confirm what Muslims believe about Jesus? Because that is the title of their discussion. Who got Jesus right, Muslims or Christians? So let's just get right into it. I have some timestamps out here, Chris. What we have, where I want to kind of pause that. I know this is all going to be new to you. So before I just go on, I want to know if you have any comments. If not, we can just get right into it.
No, yeah, the only comment that I want to make before we get into this is that it's kind of ironic that Mimi Hijab and I like the way or the name that Daughter of Christ called him earlier. God bless you, sister. Blank Mushaf Mimi. We can go with that name. That's pretty good. Uh, it's just weird that he's going to ask questions to Bart Ehrman that firmly affirms the crucifixion of Jesus. So this is going to be interesting, I think.
Right. It's funny. It's funny you said that because that is the first thing that we're gonna get into. All right. So without further ado, here we go.
And many Muslims feel that kind of your vision of, or your conclusions, your historical conclusions of who Jesus Christ is more commensurate with at least the Muslim idea than it is with the Christian one. To what extent would you agree or disagree with that notion?
I would say that my views don't fit in well with traditional Christianity in a lot of ways. I wouldn't say that they line up well with the Muslim view. I mean, for example, I really do think Jesus was crucified, and that he really was dead and buried. And
All right. Let's just right there. First thing, Chris, you nailed it. The first thing that you said, you didn't even know what we are gonna be going into first. That's exactly right. He believes Jesus was crucified and that he was really dead. So, is that compatible with what Muslims believe, or did Muhammad Hijab mess up again?
Oh, he messed up again. And to interview Bart Ehrman, a guy that actually debated Robert Price on the historical Jesus, and one of his main evidences that the historical Jesus uh, lived is that he died by crucifixion. So Bart Ehrman, that's one of his firm, solid beliefs. Like you're not getting away from that. That's exactly what historical texts actually teach. It's going to be funny if they get into a little discussion about this or not.
Yeah, actually, Lord willing, we'll get into this, but they actually have a little debate amongst themselves that we're going to get into later. We can kind of give our views, and it'll be interesting to see what side we think is the better, offering the better arguments, but not necessarily giving the most accurate position. So, all right, let's get into the next clip here. Again, this is just a review. We're not going to be getting into very thorough rebuttals and refutations of everything, but I just want to share these with you guys. I saw it myself, and I'm like, man, I have to share this with somebody. I gotta share with somebody, so I figured come up on the stream, bring my brother Claus, and we're gonna share with you guys. So here we go. Check this part out.
Beliefs.
Yeah, I think it's interesting in the New Testament that Jesus does claim to be God in the Gospel of John,
Yeah.
which is our final gospel.
Mhm.
I don't think that the historical.
All right, so we might have missed that. Hold on, we might have missed something. Did we mishear that? Hold on.
I think I heard something by Mimi there too after he stated it.
All right, let's check this out. So to be clear, Ehrman doesn't actually believe that Jesus himself thought that he was God. He has some mysterious way of trying to figure that out. But what does he say about the earliest texts, the earliest biographies, the Gospels about Jesus? Let me rewind a little bit and let's hear that. Let's hear that one more time.
God or necessarily the Son of God, but
I think actually historians can say something about this that will be surprising to a lot of people.
so what is? I mean, from once again reading a book and quoting Jesus and other things, my understanding is that your conclusion is that Jesus Christ was a messianic prophet, right? That at least that what he claimed he was, not a God or necessarily the Son of God, but not a God. To what extent is that a true representation of your beliefs?
Yeah, I think it's interesting in the New Testament that Jesus does claim to be God in the Gospel of John,
Yeah.
which is our final gospel.
Mhm.
I don't think that the historical Jesus considered himself to be a divine being at all. I think he thought that he was a son of God in the sense that he was.
Oh, wait. So he doesn't think that the historical Jesus thought he was a divine being, but he does think that the historical Jesus thought himself to be the Son of God or a Son of God. Now, is
Yep.
that compatible? Well, no, we're not going to dissect every little thing and correct Ehrman on every mistake he makes, but is that compatible with the Muslim view?
Not at all.
Not at all. The Quran over and over and over and over denies that Allah has no children, Jesus is not his son, and in fact, there's a verse in the Quran that says if the Most Merciful did take to himself a son, if he did have a son, then Muhammad would be the first of his worshippers. So if what Ehrman just said is correct, that the historical Jesus believed that he was a son of God or the son of God, I think he says the son of God, and then he kind of makes it synonymous with the Messiah, and he goes on to say that that's why he was crucified, because he believed he was the Messiah. That's not compatible at all with Islam, and if that is true, that the historical Jesus thought that he is the son of God, then according to the Quran, Muhammad would have been the first of his worshippers.
And you see here how they've panned back to Mimi Hijab there, and just as he's nodding back and forth. But when Bart Ehrman said that Jesus is described as being God in the Gospel of John, he actually said yes in the background.
Right.
If everybody didn't miss that.
Right. That's correct. All right. So there's another part. Actually, matter of fact, let's go on to, again, Ehrman is definitely wrong that the historic Jesus, the real true Jesus, didn't believe that he was a divine being. He's wrong about that, but again, that's not the really purpose of our video. If you guys want, we can do videos on where Jesus claimed to be God throughout the New Testament, and we can start with what Ehrman thinks is the earliest gospel, which is the Gospel of Mark. By the way, that's going to be interesting. Is it only the Gospel of John, in Ehrman's view, that teaches that Jesus is God, or does he believe that other gospels teach that as well? So with that being said, let's just fast forward a little bit. Let's go right around here and let's see again if this is compatible with Islam. Again, the title of this interview is "Who Got Jesus Right, Muslims or Christians?" So let's see if he thinks the historic Jesus believed that he was, for example, born of a virgin.
I don't think that the Jesus thought that like he existed before he was born, or that he was born of a virgin. I don't think that any of that's probably right.
So he doesn't think that the historic Jesus was born of a virgin. Is that compatible with Islam?
Mohammed Hijab, he's not having a good night, and you could tell. Like, I bet you before this interview, Mohammed Hijab, he was all pumped up. He was ready to go. He's like, "Yeah, we're gonna smash these Christians with this interview." And now look at his face. He looks defeated. He looks like he's lost his long lost love. That's the look that Mohammed Hijab has right now, and it's because it's not going the way that he wants it to go.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't like, what is wrong with this guy? He always brings up the wrong people to do interviews with. He always chooses the wrong topics. He picks the wrong questions. And let's just check let's just check one more thing right here. Check this out.
John has a whole different set of stories. And I think that all of these gospel authors, I think all of them think that in some sense, Jesus is God.
Huh? What was that? He
All of
thinks
them?
that all of the gospel authors think in some sense Jesus is God. So you're telling me Bart Ehrman, the, like you say, the Imam of the Muslims, the Imam of the Muslims, believes that all of the gospels teach in some way that Jesus is God. In fact, I have him in a debate on Unbelievable with Justin Brierley against Peter Williams, where he actually admits stories like, he gets into actually, he gets into what he considers to be evidences where Jesus is considered to be God throughout the Gospels, and he gets into the Gospel of Mark. He doesn't deny, for example, that Mark starts off the very opening verses of Mark teach that Jesus is Yahweh. He doesn't dispute that. So is this really the friend of Muslims? Is this really the guy Muslims want to go to? What do you think, bro?
I think this is damaging. This is actually really bad for Mohammed Hijab, and I understand why he had that face. And he's not going to look happy through this whole interview. So far, we have Bart Ehrman affirming that Jesus is described as God in some way in the gospel of all four gospels. Now, they haven't got to Paul yet, but Bart Ehrman is a firm believer that Paul was a verified follower of Christ. So I can't, I hope they get into something like that as well, but I'm not sure if they will. And also, Bart Ehrman says that he denies the virgin birth. So basically, everything that Bart Ehrman said right now goes against everything that Islam stands for. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah, and so I'm just looking through my timestamps here, and there are a couple of them that I think I can go back to, but just I want to keep us on this theme of, does Islam agree with the historic Jesus according to Bart Ehrman? Not the real historic Jesus, but the historic Jesus according to Bart Ehrman. Basically, the gospel according to Bart Ehrman. Muhammad Hijab, actually, you know what? He might have found the Islamic Injil. He might think that he might think that he actually found the Islamic Injil in Bart Ehrman. Does Bart Ehrman confirm this Islamic Injil? And as we see, he says, no, Jesus considered himself to be the Son of God. He denies the virgin birth. He believes that the earliest records, the most reliable sources, all portray Jesus as claiming to be God, although he himself doesn't believe that Jesus thought of himself in those terms. But we're going to get into later on, does he believe that claiming to be God means that you're God? Or if you don't claim to be God, does that mean you're not God? We're going to get into all of that later on. Let me just let's just go to this part real quick, and like I said, we might go back and cover some other points that I wanted to get over, but I feel like this is a good theme that we're on, so let's just stick to this. Okay, here we go.
Across how this works, at least from an Islamic perspective, but there's two things which I think may be of interest to you in Islam. One of them is that one of the necessary conditions for revelation, according to the Quran, is that there are no internal contradictions. And this is very clear. So in the Quran, it's mentioned, in chapter 4, verse 92, that if this book was from other than God, there would have been in it.
By the way, he said 492. Everyone makes mistakes. We all make mistakes. Actually, 482. So if anybody wants to check that verse out, it's 482, not 492. Just want to make that clear for the people.
I just want to point out here too. Remember, people, it's a miracle of the Quran that even 5 and 6-year-olds can memorize the Quran, but one of their top apologists can't even remember a verse that he's actually probably written down to interview Bart Ehrman. Look at the miracle at work.
Right. No, so he's basically giving him his dawah spiel, and let's see how Ehrman, let's see how he reacts, how he responds. What does it look like if a Muslim does dawah on Bart Ehrman, or if Bart Ehrman wants to put on a Christian hat? what kind of like game or like if they want to he wants to play the Christian, Mohammed Hijab is going to be himself. What will he do? How will he answer these questions? We're going to find out. Check this out. So he's giving the dawah spiel. The Quran claims there's no contradictions in it, although that's not what the verse says. But again, we're not going to be getting into every little detail. But let's continue on.
They would have found in it many contradictions, inconsistencies. And so there's this kind of falsification challenge to try and find contradictions within the Quran as a means of disproving it, because had it not been from God, then this would be a problem. Now, with the Hadith, which is, I think, more of a kind of open... All
right, so I want to just give like a sort of a preemptive, a warning for what's about to come. We don't agree necessarily with, actually, well, I should say that we don't agree at all with Ehrman's position, but I just want to show how he responds to this dawah and how he thinks some Christians may respond to this dawah. Again, we don't agree with his position. We don't agree with the Christians that he's putting out there as Christians. We wouldn't consider them to be Christians, but I just want to give that little warning. Because unlike Mohammed Hijab and these other guys, we don't appeal to these atheist, agnostic scholars and try to claim that they're on our side. What we do is we show that these guys, we can use them against, like in other words, if you want to appeal to Bart Ehrman, all right, that's your source, we'll use him against you. So with that being said, let's continue on.
Game on these kind of things. There's actually a very strict step-by-step process on if there are contradictions between hadith, what to do. And the harmonizing method. And in fact, one of the great scholars, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, who's one of the great scholars of hadith, he mentions a 6-stage process. And he says, look, you first try and harmonize it, you do this, you do that, and if it's conceivable. But at the end of it, what happens is just what you've said. You have to reject one and accept one. If there are two contradictory hadiths talking about the same event, one of them has to be rejected and one of them has to be accepted, because it's the impossibility of both of them being true, even despite the fact that both of their chains may be correct, because we have something called...
Okay, check that out. So he says, even if they both have correct chains, so, Muslims are talking about chains, we have this goes back to this person, this person, this person, this person, all the way back to Muhammad. Even if they have those correct chains, he's saying that they can still be wrong. So he just confirmed to us that the chain in and of itself doesn't actually mean anything, because they can just throw it out. So what do you think about that?
Because that's their whole argumentation to go all the way back with the recitation and the hadith. And Dr. Jonathan Brown, a Sunni scholar, he actually uses that as his argumentation to get the hadith to where it would be back to around the time of Muhammad's time. So I wouldn't doubt Mohammed Hijab wants to heave all of their evidences under the bus, but I think it's just ridiculous that they can just come up with any criteria they want whenever they want.
Right. I mean, so you can have, according to their standards, correct chains of narration, and then if they contradict each other or something, you have to prioritize one over the other. But this whole idea that we have the chain that goes all the way back to the Prophet, that goes all the way back to Allah, blah blah blah. We just found out that chain is completely meaningless. They can just throw it out. They could just put it in the trash. So, all right. So let's continue on. Again, Ehrman is gonna take a position. It's not gonna be comfortable for Mohammed Hijab. He wasn't ready for this. He wasn't prepared for this. But I'm not saying we agree with Ehrman in everything that he says, but we will comment on what we think are good responses and what are bad responses. So again, live review. Our brother Claus here has not seen this before. This is all live, raw reactions from him. He's never seen this. I've only seen it once. I don't remember every single point, but I did kind of jot down some things, and that's what we're going by for timestamps. All right, so let's continue on.
The chain of narration, where many different things have to be in line in order for the chain to be acceptable and for it to be historical. And for this reason, many people don't know is that the authenticated hadiths are much more few in number and compared to the inauthentic hadiths. So we have literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of hadiths, statements of the Prophet which have been rejected, have been seen as weak or unreliable or mawdu', which is fabricated, or matruk, or there's different classifications, and a significant minority, or even you can say a
All right,
minority.
we all know the dawah script. Let's just fast forward a little bit. I want to get to when Ehrman. Okay, here we go. So we all know the dawah script. I mean, we could have said that, but let's just fast forward a little bit. Here we go.
Being interested in that?
I'm not a Quran scholar, obviously, but I would like to say a couple things about it. One is that it does seem to me that if a book is without contradictions, that has no bearing on whether it comes from God or not.
True.
And so it's not a
Here's the dawah script going out the window. He just said, hey, you might present me with a book that has no contradictions. I'm not going to grant that the Quran has no contradictions, but even because he says I'm not a Quran scholar, which what he's saying in a nice way is that I don't really know what the Quran says. So it's possible what you're saying is correct, that there's no contradictions. And if that's the case, that doesn't mean that it's from God. So here we go. He's starting to fight back. What do you think, Chris?
This is why what Mohammed Hijab should have did is just shut up. They should have had somebody else on there, and what they should have did is they should have picked apart some of the narratives that Bart Ehrman doesn't agree with in the scriptures, and ask him why he doesn't agree with them. That probably would have been a lot better interview, and it would have looked a lot better for Islam. But the topics that they're going into, and him trying to even to go through the dawah script, Bart Ehrman's not going to fall for that, and he's right. There's math books in every school in this world, and they're right. There's no contradictions in them, but yet that book wasn't revealed by Allah, and that's basically what Bart Ehrman's saying here.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's continue on.
Impossible for a human to write a book is without contradictions. That has no bearing on whether it comes from God or not.
True.
And so it's not impossible for a human to write a book without contradictions, because many people do. And so I've had phone books that are inerrant, but I certainly don't think God gave them. Another thing is that I as a good Westerner who was raised in.
All right, hold up. Let's go back. He said he has phone books that are inerrant, but he doesn't think that God gave them. And then Hijab laughs with them. But wait, what are you doing laughing with them? You're literally laughing at your own argument. So
Yeah, and it's even worse than that, Jay.
Yeah.
He's not even just laughing at his own argument. He's laughing at his God's argument, because that argument comes straight from the Quran, Surah 4:82, right?
Yeah, exactly. Not 92, like he said, 82. But I'm kind of just joking about that. We all make mistakes. But, I mean, you figure if you're going to put up a professional interview out like that, you would, dot your I's and cross your T's kind of thing. But, hey, maybe that's just us. I don't know. All right, so let's continue on. Check this out.
Without knowing it, was raised in Greek philosophical traditions, including Aristotelian logic. I agree that two contradictory things can't be true historically. But I will also say that is a product of my education, and that there are some areas that Aristotelian logic does not apply. For example, if I were a Christian, I would still believe in quantum mechanics. But I mean, quantum theory, it just does not work on the kind of logical level. And to say that it can't be from God, if I were a Christian, I'd say the world was created by God, and the quantum mechanics does not, they're contradictions. They're just part of the business. And so, I would also say that the other thing
with that point, I would agree with what you said about phone book. The phone book is almost good. What it is usually, the way we kind of put this forward is that there's the difference between necessary and sufficient conditions. So the way we would put it is that it's a necessary condition for a book from God not to have contradictions. It's not sufficient for it to be without contradictions.
I know a lot of Christians who disagree with that, because that's an assumption about what kind of book God could write. And for example, I know theologians who would say,
Again, we don't check off on what Ehrman is saying here. Actually, Chris doesn't even know what he's about to say, but I can say right now, we don't agree with what he's about to put forward. But we're just commenting on what happened and seeing if this is actually good for Islam or not. We're trying to see if this is good for Islam or not. So any comments so far, Chris? You want me to keep going?
I'm going to hold off for a minute right
Okay. So what he's about to say is that he knows of some Christian theologians, which we wouldn't consider to be Christian theologians, that accept the fact that there may be contradictions in the Bible. Obviously, we don't agree with that. But let's just see how he responds. Let's just see how Mohammed Hijab responds.
Theologians who would say that, yes, Matthew and Mark contradict at this point, but it's because Matthew's trying to make this important theological statement and Mark's trying to make that important theological statement. And both theological statements are true, even if they're not both historical.
Yes. No, but then the question is, if it's both, I mean, we're talking more about people that take the high view of Scripture and biblical inerrancy, rather than kind of Christian scholars that come afterwards and talk about like
So they are going to get into a little bit about different types of Christians, and honestly, like, if you're a Christian and you believe that there are contradictions in the Bible, are you really a Christian? No, you can't really be a Christian and believe that God's word has error in it. So neither of these guys are correct on this point, but let's just see where they take it.
Example, those who say, I'm not talking about
there
are many
no,
now,
if you hold to inerrancy, then the contradiction thing's a big problem.
Exactly. Not those scholars like Karl Bart. I was reading. It's got your kind of first name and his surname, but obviously, he was talking about himself, the vulnerabilities of the Bible, and if you look at his kind of like his works and stuff, and many scholars in the Christian tradition have noticed this. We're not saying that all obviously all of Christianity is characterized by the fact that people believe in biblical inerrancy. Is typically evangelical belief system, but this is where I think the argument is most potent. Your type of argument,
yes.
Or would say our type of argument as well, because if you hold that everything in the Bible is inspired by God, the all-knowing one, that would suggest that if there are contradictions between two propositions on the same kind of event that's being referred to, then either God got it wrong, which is absurd, or that those who wrote on behalf of him got it wrong, which is more plausible.
All right, so we can go back to this, but I can show one example off the top of my head right now where there's a blatant contradiction in the different readings of the Quran, and we can get into that, but I want to let this play out a little bit more before we get a little deeper into this. But
I was going to say, we can show different contradictions in the numbering of certain things in the Quran as well. So
right, all right. So here so they can agree with each other that they might say the Bible has contradictions. Neither of them will challenge that point, but do they actually agree that this is a good argument for Islam or not? That's what we want to get to. Is this a good argument for Islam or not? Does this do any favors to the dawah people? And let's see that.
I don't agree with that, because I think they could get it right theologically, but not get it right historically. My view, the reason for pointing out that you can be, the reason why I pointed this out about theologians isn't really to make a point about academics. It's a point of saying you can still be a Christian and not be a fundamentalist.
Yes, of course. Yes.
You meant
again. I have to keep saying this, but I just want to be really clear that we don't agree with Ehrman. Just want to be really clear in that. What we're doing is we're just evaluating this discussion, this debate, and seeing if it does any favors for Islam or not. That's the only thing we're doing here. We don't agree with Ehrman on the point about the Bible having contradictions, and that the fact that you can be a Christian and believe the Bible has contradictions. We don't think that that's actually possible. You can't say that God's word is imperfect. So let's continue on.
Mentioned the neo atheist, and it's, I think, one of the big problems with some of the neo atheist authors is they assume that
everyone's evangelical.
If it's if you're not a fundamentalist, you're not a Christian. It's like, what?
Exactly,
or like they think that all religions fundamental, Islam, Judaism, is like they have this whole thing about like it's, and no, I mean, most people religious are not like that. And so
I think you're right, but here's what I would say on this point, though. I mean, I think there's a reason why evangelicals talk about biblical inerrancy and they hold to it, and the reason is that if God is being fair with people, right, then the accessibility to guidance that the primary audience has to the revelation shouldn't be disparate from the accessibility of guidance to people that come in later generations, because then that would be an advantage of the prior people to the kind of later people. And then questions of, well, if God wanted me to follow guidance and the guidance itself is corrupt, then what kind of guidance is it? I think that Muslims would agree with that sentiment to a large extent, like the idea that if guidance is to be sent to a people, it needs to be complete and it needs to be preserved. And so from that angle, I understand where the kind of, if you want to call them that, fundamentalists or kind of evangelical Christians are coming from. The only problem, as I said, as you said, sorry, is, yeah, it's true to say that in Christianity, not all people are characterized by believing in biblical inerrancy. Like many Catholics, many different types of Protestants don't believe in it, and in which case they have an easier case to make when it comes to sorting out these contradictions, but then they have a more difficult case to make as to why God hasn't revealed his book in a preserved way such that we can all have access to it in a very similar manner.
Well, I know this is an important argument that apologists use for Islam. My view about this is, as somebody who is not either Christian or Muslim, is that that it doesn't make sense to me for humans to say what God has to do. If God wants to make a revelation, it has to be this, this, or that. It's got to be clear. It's got to be consistent. There cannot be contradictions. There cannot be manuscript problems. I mean, who says? I mean, God. I mean, you're talking about somebody who's beyond your imagination.
Well, so what we would reply to that?
All right. So he's giving back. He's fighting back. He's fighting back on the dawah, and eventually, Hijab. Maybe he gets a message. Maybe he gets a text. Someone gets him. Usually, it's someone else who gets him in check. He realizes that they've been debating with each other for too long, and they need to get back on topic, because the topic is they're trying to discredit the Bible, but really what he's doing is he's trying to do dawah on Ehrman, or he's throwing out dawah points on Ehrman, and Ehrman is throwing back and saying, well, I don't buy into that. I don't believe that. I don't think that that's right. He's saying, look, you as a Muslim, you have certain views of what revelation is, and on this level, we could agree with some of the premises that Ehrman is stating, that Muslims do have certain ideas of revelation and what it should look like, what it should be, how it should be preserved, although they don't actually have the preservation that they claim to believe in, and then they try to impose their views on everybody else. So if the Bible is not preserved in the way that they think the Quran should be preserved, not the way the Quran is preserved, but the way that they think that it should be preserved, then they fault us. And he's saying, well, who are you to make up these rules? Like, who gave you that authority to just make up these rules? What do you think, Chris?
Just when I was going to take a bite of a cookie too.
Oh, sorry. You want me to keep talking? I can
no,
keep
no,
going.
I'm good. I'm good here. So Bart Ehrman's right. It's naive of a God to claim all of this. It's redundant of an all-knowing God to give these type of criterias to determine if it's from him or not. And I think that's what Bart Ehrman's trying to get at. That's why he's pushing back at him. But I don't doubt somebody's trying to reel Muhammad back here, because if they keep going, Bart Ehrman's going to destroy Islam, and I think they know that. Yeah,
exactly. And again, Ehrman or Hijab, they're not representing our positions. We just want to see, are you Muhammad Hijab, are you actually doing any favors for Islam when you interview people like Bart Ehrman? Bart Ehrman, who says he doesn't believe that Jesus believed he was actually born of a virgin. Bart Ehrman, who says that the historic Jesus actually believed that he is the Son of God. Bart Ehrman, who believes that Jesus was actually crucified and died. Are you doing any favors?
Oh. And can I add one more?
Let's keep adding to the laundry list. Is he doing any favors to Islam?
And Bart Ehrman actually said that he believes that the apostles truly believed that they saw the risen Christ. Now, he doesn't believe that the apostles saw the risen Christ, but he said that he believes that the apostles truly believed that they did see the risen Christ. So I don't think that would float with Islam either, Jay.
Right. I mean, everything that he believes, and by the way, they're going to talk about this later, but this thing called Islam Net, they're actually having Ehrman do a seminar on the topic of did Jesus think that he was God or something to that effect. I'm sure that they paid him to do that. He doesn't do that stuff for free. But imagine Bart Ehrman is giving a seminar for Islam Net on the topic of did Jesus think he was God or something to that effect. So this is like a little sneak preview as into what this seminar is going to be like. So far, he's saying that yeah, all the gospels teach that Jesus was God in some way. So Ehrman thinks that he has some way to decipher through what the earliest witnesses of who Jesus is are by the most reliable witnesses. And he thinks he can go beyond that and somehow figure out what he thinks Jesus actually really thought about himself. He thinks he's like some mind reader that he can go back despite all the evidence to the contrary. Again, that's
and I
yeah.
also want to point out here, Jay, before we move on,
Okay, yeah, go
that
ahead.
they're talking about historical things and the historical Jesus. They're only referring to the New Testament text. They're not
That's another
referring to
point
the
that's going to come
Quran.
up later. That's a really
Oh,
funny point. Yeah,
okay.
but you're right. That's an amazing. So funny. So this comes up a little later. We'll get into it. I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, we'll get into that. All right, so let's continue on. I think this part only goes on for a little bit longer, and then we have some other points to cover. So here we go. Let's continue on.
Right, is that we would say otherwise it would be indistinguishable from human speech. There has to be something within revelation which distinguishes it from human speech so as to act as an evidence.
Yes, I know that's your argument,
Yeah.
but I'm saying who says it has to be? You are.
No, if it's not, then the issue would be then that anyone can claim prophecy.
Oh, yo, check this out. Check this out. I don't have to rewind that because I'm talking, but check this out. So listen to the problem that Mohammed Hijab lays out and listen to what Ehrman says. Listen to the problem really carefully and then listen to what Ehrman says. I'm going to rewind it. Listen to this.
I know that's your argument,
Yeah.
but I'm saying who says it has to be? You are.
No, if it's not, then the issue would be then that anyone can claim prophecy or prophethood, right? Anyone can claim prophethood.
Well, the Christians say that's what the Christians say all Muslims are doing. They're just claiming things for themselves.
This is what we would say.
Yo, this is so. What are you doing, Mohammed Hijab? What are you doing? This guy is not doing favors for dawah. He's just not. He's not doing any favors for himself. I mean, do we need to even comment on that? Ehrman just come on, man.
That I got a good laugh out of you. At least I'm gonna thank Mimi Hijab for being able to give me a laugh tonight. Anyway, I feel better after that good laugh.
That's funny. All right, so I think he just like allows Mimi to just you got me calling him Mimi. he allows Mohammed Hijab to just kind of continue on. I don't know if we're gonna listen to much of that, but let's just I think that's what happens. Let's see. Hold on.
We would say that in the past prophets came. This is actually what Ibn Hajar said, the same scholar that I've mentioned before, the Hadith scholar. He said that in the past prophets came with kind of visual miracles. So things like splitting the sea, we believe in that, right? So Moses came and he turned the stick into a snake and all this kind of. So they did that, and he said the difference between.
Oh yeah, okay. So I have in my notes here to fast forward until this point because I guess he just goes on and on and on. All right, so let's just check what this is here.
Truth presents itself as God's words or the words of the all-knowing one. That should have, and then God decides to punish somebody because they're not following it. It's less voracious than someone saying, well, actually, God is punishing someone for not believing in something, which there are evidences of, both necessary evidences, as we mentioned, preservation and inconsistent, but then also the sufficient evidences, so prophecies. And so this would be the argument that we would put forward.
Yeah, no, I know, and I don't buy it. I think that it's based on assumptions.
Yeah, so he doesn't buy your dawah. Go sell to someone else. He doesn't buy it.
And that was quick too, eh brother? Like it wasn't even like he didn't like. You can tell when Bart Ehrman's debating Christians and a Christian makes a good point. He sits there and he thinks for a second because he wants to compose himself and he wants to come back with an articulated answer to the proper question. So he'll sit there and he'll think about what he's going to say and then he'll say it. Not here. I hear you. That was like
Just
rapid fire right there.
rapid fire right here. Look how fast this reaction is. He's like falling asleep. Look at the guy. He's like falling asleep. He's like, when is this? Because I fast forwarded, but he was going for like 2 minutes straight, just dawah script, and he's like falling asleep on his chair, and he's like, what did I get myself into? Why am I working with Muslims? What did I get myself into?
And look at that, and someone in the 20th century can look at that. And so this would be the argument that we would put forward.
Yeah, no, I know, and I don't buy it. I think that it's based on assumptions about
Yes.
what's necessary, and you might say that logic is logic, but logic is not logic. I mean, anthropologists have clearly shown that, in fact, in different cultures, what counts as logic in one culture.
Anyway, so he gets a little off the rails here.
Yeah.
You know, this is atheist, agnostic worldview, but hey, he's not our guy. We're not appealing to him. We don't have to fall on him. That's your mistake, Mohammed Hijab. You brought this guy on. And in fact, if you go through some of the comments, people they're very disappointed. They're very disappointed with some of these answers and some of these responses from Ehrman. So let's see, what do I have here next? So who was Jesus according to Bart Ehrman? That's at around 35, right around here. So he asked him the question, who is Jesus according to you? Great question, but unfortunately Ehrman doesn't actually know who the true Jesus is. But let's just see if his version of Jesus is compatible with the Islamic version of Jesus.
Make their mind up on that. Going back on the Bible and tell us more about that maybe before we end, is I want you to tell me something about who, in your opinion, maybe put it in this very blunt way, who was Jesus Christ? Who, according to you, was Jesus Christ?
So I think Jesus was a completely human being. I think that he's from a little town called Nazareth. There's a small little hamlet. He was impoverished. He was probably a day laborer of some kind, and he was some kind of religious genius, I think, maybe with a charismatic personality. Who I don't think he was well educated. Probably wasn't educated at all, but he had a gift for insight into matters of religion, and understood that he himself had been chosen by God in order to proclaim that God was soon going to intervene in history to destroy all the forces of evil that are creating all the misery and suffering in the world. And God was going to bring in the paradise that the world was supposed to originally have. There was going to be a kingdom here on earth, and people would be raised from the dead in order either to be brought into the kingdom or to be destroyed for all time. And he thought this was going to happen very soon. He offended the authorities for a variety of reasons connected with his message, and they decided that he was a troublemaker, and they arranged for him to be crucified, and they executed him.
Oh, that doesn't sound too Islamic to me. Does that sound Islamic to you, Chris?
No, and I don't think there's any Muslim in this world that can say amen to that one.
That's right. So his Jesus is not the Jesus of Islam. So the title is, who got Jesus right? Muslims or Christians? Now, why would you ask an atheist who got Jesus right? I mean, I don't know what this guy's mindset is, or like what. I don't know. I don't want to get into his mind at all. We saw the kind of stuff that he said to David Wood and apostate prophet and those guys. I don't want to be anywhere near his mind.
And it's not just that he's asking an atheist or an agnostic. He's
Mm-hmm.
actually asking an atheist or agnostic that has a vendetta against Christianity.
Yeah,
Right?
and he's still not budging on these points. He's like, yeah, Jesus was crucified. He was executed. That's not your Jesus. That's not your Jesus, Muhammad Hijab.
Yeah, he definitely can't amen that one.
All right, so now this part is interesting. Let me get the exact. Check this out. So again, he's being invited on by this network, Islam.net, to give a seminar on if Jesus thought that he was God. Now, check out what he says here. So what kind of things can you walk away from Ehrman's view. If Ehrman presents the correct view of Jesus according to Muslims, and according to him, he thinks that Jesus didn't think that he himself was a divine being. If that's true, is that the same thing as saying that Jesus is not God? So in other words, just because Jesus didn't think or claim that he was God, according to Ehrman, does that actually mean that he is not God? So check this out.
Important aspects of Islam. And for a Christian audience, it's really important, because if Jesus didn't call himself God, suppose he did not call himself God, that would not mean he's not God.
Uh-oh. If he didn't call himself God, that doesn't mean he's not God. By the way, he did call himself God over and over and over and over and over again through the New Testament. We have it attested to, widely attested to. But anyway, this is their guy. That's, like Chris said, this is their imam, this is their sheikh, this is Ehrman. And he's saying, hey guys, Muslims, if you want to walk away with my argument, you want to like bottom line my argument, let's just say Jesus didn't even say that he's God. He never claimed to be God. That doesn't mean he's not God. What do you think, Chris?
Oh, all ham due to Allah, all ham due to Allah. Imam Bart Ehrman is destroying the filth of Islam. Take a beer, boys, take a beer. That's all I got to say to that one.
All right, so earlier you were talking about the sources that they're appealing to. Now, Ehrman has a book written, and by the way, Ehrman's kind of known for this. Ehrman was on an atheist talk show. Man, I don't know how long ago it was. It must be many years back. But he was on an atheist talk show, and the atheist was trying to kind of field like certain questions and try to feel out his boundaries. Like, where can I go with him on this? What can I say that he'll back me on? He started to challenge him on the existence of Jesus, the historic existence of Jesus. And Ehrman shot back. And this atheist he did not know how to respond. So Ehrman's kind of known for this. When you invite him on your show, when you invite him on your podcast, he's kind of known for fighting back if he actually believes something that, is contrary to what you're saying. So he stumped that atheist guy. The atheist guy was saying, Jesus didn't actually exist. Ehrman was like, what are you talking about? If there's anything that we know about history, we know Jesus existed. He's like, and he got accused of using Christian apologist arguments, and he's like, I'm not a Christian. I'm an agnostic. I'm an atheist. I just happen to be a historian as well, and this is my field, and you're asking me for my expertise. I'm telling you that this is not a disputed fact. So anyway, so he's known for doing this kind of thing, surprising his hosts. All right, now check this out. Mohammed Hijab asked him, right now he's about to ask him about the evidence that we can appeal to prove that Jesus existed. So if an atheist comes up to you and he says to you, hey, there's no historic evidence that Jesus existed, what evidence could you bring him? Now, funny thing about this is, well, we're going to hear it. We'll listen to it, and let's see if a Muslim can answer the way Ehrman is answering. Let's see if a Muslim can answer the way that Ehrman answers. Check it out.
What would be your strongest evidences to someone who's a skeptic of the existence of Jesus in the first place?
Well, I wrote a whole book on this called "Did Jesus Exist?" because the evidence is so overwhelming. This is not a debated point among experts, whether they're atheists or agnostics or Christians or Jews. It's just like, it's not. But there is this a loud group of mythicists who think Jesus didn't exist, and you just wonder, how much evidence do you need? I mean,
So how much evidence do you need? Let's get into the evidence. What is the evidence? And can a Muslim use this evidence?
Book I go through, like, we have all of these sources of information. I mean, you have these four gospels, but these four gospels are based on earlier sources that were all independent of each other. And you've got an author like Paul who
hold up. Before he gets into Paul, did you see Muhammad's reaction to that? He said, wow. He just appealed to the four gospels as evidence for Jesus existing. And Muhammad Hijab is like, wow. Like you're gonna use that evidence? Muhammad Hijab, you're going to use that evidence? Are you really going to use that evidence? All right, let's hear what he has to say about Paul.
That were all independent of each other. And you've got an author like Paul who personally knew Jesus' brother. and he personally knew Jesus' closest disciple, Peter. And it's like, he's not trying to prove Jesus existed. He's just like, Paul, it's like, if Jesus' brother didn't exist, you'd think he'd know it. If Jesus had a brother, you'd think his brother would know that he didn't exist. Yeah. So, anyway.
Yo, look at him laughing like that. Like, come on, you wouldn't use that argument, Mohammed Hijab. Can you guys picture, honestly, can you guys picture Mohammed Hijab arguing with an atheist, and then Hijab quotes Paul?
Yes. That's what. Yes.
Could you picture that?
Not exactly.
Oh, man.
They keep saying that Paul and Jesus never taught the same thing, and they contradicted each other. So there's no way that a Muslim would ever quote Paul when it comes to it. And look how excited Bart Ehrman was to bring Paul up, because there's so much writing of Paul, and Paul is dated so early. Like even the creed that he says, what is it? 1 Corinthians 15, I believe it is. He quotes the Christian creed in that, and it's an early creed of the church. And some scholars date it to within years of the death of Christ, to up to maybe 8 years to 9 years after the death of Christ.
And we're talking about atheist scholars as well. We're not talking about what they were referring to as fundamentalists or no. We're talking about atheist scholars. I mean, this is just historic evidence. You can't get. I mean, when you're talking about early sources, and by the way, let's talk about the sources too. So anyway, look at his face. He's laughing. Come on, you're laughing, but you know you wouldn't use that evidence, Mohammed Hijab. Stop playing. You wouldn't use that evidence. All right, so let's listen to it.
So I think that they I just think that it's not a helpful point of view, and that if you're opposed to Christianity, there are probably more helpful ways to go about it than to say that Jesus didn't exist. If I ever did, which I never would. I mean, I don't believe in attacking any other religions or discounting, but if I wanted to discount Judaism, or if I wanted to discount Islam, I wouldn't say, "Oh, Muhammad never lived." Of course he lived.
Let's not comment on that. Anyway, keep going.
It doesn't mean I have to agree with him.
Exactly. This is exactly the point, and I think that it's good that you mentioned that, and you do give weighting to extra biblical sources as well, don't you? So
I do. I think there are.
All right. So you do you think he's referring to the Quran when he says he gives weight to extra biblical evidences? Do you think that's what he's thinking of?
Bart Ehrman wouldn't even view the Quran as any type of evidence.
I think that's the end of it. So we'll just close that out. But yeah. So do you think that he would view the Quran as weighty evidence?
Never. Can you hear me, Brother Jay?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, sorry, I had to clear my throat. But I mean, this is hilarious. So he kind of laughs and chuckles, and he goes, "By the way, you also give weight to other evidences outside of the Bible, right? Extra biblical evidence." I'm paraphrasing. And he's like, "Yeah, I do," but he doesn't mean the Quran. Okay, so he's not saying that the Quran is a piece of evidence that he would ever use to defend the historic existence of Jesus.
And also, what Bart Ehrman basically did there is he's verifying that there's outside sources other than just the biblical text that addresses the crucifixion of Jesus. Because as Bart Ehrman says, there's three facts or a few facts within Christianity, is that Jesus was born, he was a religious figure, and that he died by crucifixion. So those extra biblical sources must contain that as well. So Mimi Hijab is just destroying his religion in
100%.
45 minutes.
45 minutes, yeah. Hey, we're actually under an hour. That's great. I thought we were gonna go longer. That's perfect to be under an hour. So we can just summarize, really. So just to reiterate again, I know that I've said this many times, but let me just say it one more time. We don't agree with Ehrman's position or Mohammed Hijab's position, obviously. So all the things that he was saying about, oh yeah, there are some Protestants, some Catholics, and some of these groups who, they don't believe that the Bible is the inerrant word. No. We don't check off on that at all. That's crazy. You have to believe that the Bible is the perfect inerrant word of God. You can't be a Christian and not believe that. I don't care if you call yourself a Christian, but Jesus himself said that the word of God cannot be broken. So you're going against Jesus at that point. So let's summarize, bro, Chris. Mohammed Hijab invites Ehrman on to his show, or IslamNet, whoever kind of organized this thing. He's on his show, or he's interviewing him on that show, and he's trying to ask the question, who got Jesus right? Based on what he said, if we had to kind of take Ehrman's view seriously, well, I won't ask it like that. I'll say it like this. Did the Jesus that Ehrman presented line up with the Islamic Jesus? Why or why not?
Definitely not. And the reason for this is because I'll start off with the only evidence that Bart Ehrman was really looking at to find the historical Jesus and to identify the historical Jesus is he went to the Gospels and to the writings of Paul, to James and to others. But these would have been the people at the time of Christ, maybe a few outside sources written within the first 2 centuries about him. Definitely went to the early church fathers about it as well, but definitely did not go to the Quran. Now, the next reason I would say this didn't help Islam is because Bart Ehrman believes that Jesus did not have a miracle birth, that he was not birthed into this earth from a virgin. This is something else that goes against Islam. Now, there's not much about Jesus's lifetime in Islam, but I believe that during the lifetime of Jesus in Islam, he wasn't a carpenter, I don't believe, or he didn't work with his hands. He would have been walking around and doing miracles at that time as well. I'm not sure if he would have been a preacher at that time in the Islamic narrative. It doesn't really say, but it does identify Jesus as creating clay birds, speaking from the crib, saying that he's a prophet from birth, things to this nature. So you can infer from the evidence that is being provided to us that the Quranic narrative of Jesus is that he was this prophet all of his life, not anything that Bart Ehrman was describing. Now, moving on, he's identifying the different people that knew Jesus and their authenticity to the fact of the historical Jesus. So he's going to Luke, he's going to Mark, he's going to the Gospel of John, he's going to Paul, he's going to James, he's going to Peter, he's going to all these people, he's naming all of these people and saying that if you need to find out the historical Jesus, these are the ones you need to go to. Now, in a Muslim sense, they're going to be like, they're corrupted, they're corrupted. And then the last thing I'll end off here is, of course, Bart Ehrman fully affirms the crucifixion of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So that is definitely a no-no when it comes to Islam. Oh, and to add on to that as well, Jay, is that Bart Ehrman also believes that Jesus believed that he was the Son of God, and the apostles believed that he was the Son of God. This is something that would be impossible in Islam as well.
100%, bro. Thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you, everybody in the live chat. Thanks, everybody who's going to be watching this later. We appreciate you all, and we hope that this was a blessing. That for hopefully it's going to be a wake up call for Mohammed Hijab. Pray for Mohammed Hijab and Bart Ehrman. Pray for them both, that God will open up both of their eyes so that they come to repentance. But hopefully a little bit of a wake up call. Hopefully it's a blessing to others. We pray that everybody, whatever good came out of this, we just pray that it finds its way into the right hands. So if you guys think that this is useful at all, then please do use it for whatever purposes you want to use it for. If it's just for laughs, laughing at the dawah fails, hey, I mean, we should come up with a channel, dawah fails. That'd be pretty funny. Dawah fails. Anyway, we're just under an hour, so might as well end it out. Any last words, Brother Chris? I know that you just kind of concluded, but maybe you want to say goodbye or God bless, anything like that.
Yeah. The only thing that I want to say is I just want to thank you, Brother Jay, for bringing me onto the stream again. And God bless all of you out there watching the stream now and who will be watching this video in the future. Stay tuned to Jay. He brings out wonderful content. And usually I'm like you guys, I'm jumping to the computer as soon as I get that notification. Thank you very much, Jay.
Thank you, brother. God bless you. God bless you all. And everybody, take care.